Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the lecture of real analysis. In the last lecture, we have seen the important deductions which are depending on the conditions of integrability. The condition of integrability is actually a necessary and sufficient condition for the function to be integrable. And we have seen the condition is nothing but UPF minus LPF is less than epsilon given in two different forms. In the first form, condition on the partition was integrability, which says that the function is integrable if there exists a number I lying between lower sum and upper sum such that mod of UPF minus I less than epsilon and mod of I minus LPF is less than function to be integrable. And this is again we have defined for the partitions P. Okay, for the partitions, that is for an arbitrary partition it is true. In the seventh reduction we will define the same statement, or we will write the same statement with the condition on a partition that with norm less than delta. But already in reduction number 6 we have proved that this is true for an arbitrary partition, means it is equally true for the partitions whose norm is less than delta. These are the two important deductions we have seen. Then we have moved towards the integrability of sum and difference of integrable functions. Among sum and difference, the first one we have completed, that is integrability of sum of two functions. And the statement says that if f1 and f2 are two bounded and integrable functions, okay, and then prove that f is equal to f1 plus f2 is also integrable, and this is given by integration f is equal to integration f1 plus integration f2. Actually, this is the criteria, or this method we have used already in our 12th standard in order to find out the integration of the addition of two different functions, right? To prove this statement, in order to prove that addition is integrable, first we have checked out whether this function is bounded or not. And as the two functions f1 and f2 are bounded, therefore automatically it gives us the addition of the two functions, that is f1 plus f2 is also bounded. After that we have given the notations for the bounds, that is suprema intima of the functions f1, f2 and f is actually f1 plus f2. Therefore single dashes are the bounds for the function f1, that is mi dash, mi double dash, small mi double dash are the bounds for f2 without dashes, that is only capital M and small m with the bounds for here. Later we have established the relation between the bounds of the function f1 plus f2, right? Once we define the bounds of the function, here is the relation we have obtained. Then later we have tried to convert those bounds to sums. Once we get the relation between their bounds, then easily we have proved that the function f is equal to f1 plus f2 is integrable. Later we have also proved that integration f is integration f1 plus integration f2. That is, in case of integrability of sum of two functions, we have completed the theorem. Now in today's lecture we will follow the same thing for the difference of two integrable functions. Let me write the statement. The statement says that if f1 f2 are two bounded and integrable functions, on closed interval AB, then prove that f equal to f1 minus f2 is also integrable. On closed interval AB, and integration a to b f dx is equal to integration a to b f1 dx minus integration a to b f2 dx. This is what we want to prove. Okay, actually in the last theorem I told you to derive the relation between the bounds of the functions in terms of mi dash and mi. Have you done this? Have you found the relation? As here in the first theorem, we have found the relation between the bounds of f, that is f1 plus f2, na? Because the whole proof depends on this only, correct? Have you found this kind of relation in case of the subtraction of two functions? Yes or no? Students? Is the voice clear for everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
No one is responding.
Yes,
Na?
ma'am.
That's why I thought there may be a difficulty in hearing. Okay. Let me continue. I think you have not found out the relation between the bounds. Hmm? I have to tell again. Okay. As done in the previous theorem, what we want to do here, we want to first check whether the function f defined as f1 minus f2 is bounded or not. After checking this is bounded, we will check its integrability, and in the second part, we will prove this result. That is integration f is integration f1 minus into f2. Let me proceed for part 1. Can anyone answer if f1 f2 are bounded, whether f1 minus f2 is bounded or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Bounded.
Yes, it is bounded. That's the first step I will write to prove that f equal to f1 minus f2 is bounded and integrable. Bounded and integrable on closed interval AB. Okay. Here we can write this f1 minus f2 as f1 plus minus f2, right now this is an addition of two functions. Okay, therefore we in the first theorem itself we have proved that the addition is bounded. Addition of two bounded functions is bounded, therefore one can say that the function is bounded here also. Okay, any doubt with this?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now we will go for again finding the relation between the bounds. Before that, let me take one partition and let me write down the notations of the bounds. Here I will write directly that f is bounded. F is bounded on closed interval AB. Okay, let us write the partition. Let P equal to x naught, x1, x2 till xn equal to b any partition of closed interval AB. Okay. Now what are the symbols we have used for the bounds of the functions? Let capital EMI dash and small EMI dash be the bounds. Or you can write directly be the suprema and infima. The suprema and infima of f1 respectively. Okay, then mi double dash, small mi double dash be the suprema and infima of f2 respectively, and capital mi, small mi be the suprema and infima of f equal to f1 minus f2 respectively on ith subinterval. Right? Now, as here we are writing the bounds for f2, but here if we observe this is not f2, here it is coming with minus f2. Na? Therefore, if mi dash and capital Mi is the suprema of f2, then what will be the infima of minus f2? Clearly, for minus f2, the role of the two bounds is going to interchange. That is, mi minus mi double dash becomes the infima and minus mi double dash becomes the suprema of the functions. Okay, see here. Consider, I will write the function f1 of x lies between which two bounds? Capital mi dash and small mi dash. Similarly, f2x lies between mi double dash and small mi double dash. Okay. Now we want to make the subtraction. Therefore, what we will do? We will change the sign of this second one. Therefore, if I change the sign, if I multiply by the negative, inequalities will get reversed. Therefore, what we will get? Minus mi double dash is greater equal by minus f2x is greater equal by minus mi double dash. Okay, that is one can write in a less equal format as minus mi double dash less than or equals to minus f2x less than or equals to minus mi double dash, small m double dash. Let me call this to be statement number 1 and let this be statement number 2. Now what will happen if I add equation 1 and 2? Adding 1 and 2. Adding 1 and 2. Okay, what will happen if I add 1 and 2? Okay, f1x minus f2x. What will be the lower bound? Mi dash minus mi double dash. Right now, let me write down the bounds. Small mi dash minus capital Mi dash less than or equals to f1 minus f2 operated on x is less than or equals to capital Mi dash minus Mi double dash, small Mi double dash. Therefore, from this, may I say this will be an upper bound of f1 minus f2 and this will be a lower bound of f1 minus f2. But what about their suprema and infima? Suprema and infima of f1 minus f2 we have assumed to be capital Mi and small mi. Then what will be the relation between these terms, right? What I will write here, I will write the term mi dash minus mi double dash. This is arbitrary lower bound. And what is small mi? Small mi is greatest lower bound, that is infima. What about capital Mi? Capital Mi is least upper bound, that is suprema. And this is my arbitrary upper bound. Arbitrary upper bound. Then what do you think? What would be a relation between these four terms? No doubt, the relation between these two terminologies will be less than or equal, because infima is always less equal by suprema. I just want to know relation between these two terms and these two terms. Can anyone tell me? Yes. Half of the answer I have written actually on the board itself. This is arbitrary lower bound and it's
Less than equal to, ma'am.
hello.
मॅम तुमचा व्हॉइस ब्रेक होतोय.
Acha. Now check please.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, now it is clear.
Okay. Can anyone tell me the relation between these two terminologies now?
Less
Less
than
Than
equal.
equal to.
Good. This is less than or equals to. Okay. And what about here? Here also it is less than or
Less
equal.
than
Than
equal.
equal to.
Correct, na? Therefore, this is what the relation between the bounds of the function f we have obtained. And let me call this as statement number 3. And what is the next procedure? If once I obtain the bound, I have to convert it to the sums. Right now, upper sums and lower sum. Then how can I convert it to the sums? What should be a multiplier? What should
Summation.
be? Good. We will
Delta
multiply
xi.
by, yes, multiply 3 by delta xi and adding over I equals to 1 to n, right? Therefore, let me write summation I from 1 to n mi dash minus mi double dash into delta xi less than or equals to summation small mi delta xi less than or equals to summation capital Mi delta xi less than or equals to summation Mi double dash, sorry, Mi single dash minus Mi double dash delta xi, and everywhere the sum is running from 1 to n. Okay. Now what we will do? We will separate the sums over the terminology. Separate. Okay, let me separate. For the first sum is summation I equals to 1 to n mi dash delta xi minus summation mi double dash delta xi less than or equals to summation mi delta xi less than or equals to summation capital Mi delta xi, and finally this is less than or equals to summation capital Mi dash delta xi minus small mi double dash delta xi. Okay, everywhere the sum is running over I equals to 1 to n. Is this point clear? Now every sum represent every sum. Okay, can you tell me the sum values? This is the lower sum, right now? This is the lower
Yes, ma'am.
sum with respect
LPF1.
to LPF1. Good. What about this? This is upper sum with respect to which function?
UPF2.
Good, F2 function less than or equals to, this is lower sum with
LPF.
LPF
PF.
less than or equals to UPF. Good. Less than or equals to this one is upper sum, no? Capital M means upper sum.
UPF1.
UPF1 minus
LPF2.
LPF2. Good. Okay, this is what the relation between bounds we have obtained. This is the relation between the bounds we have obtained. Now what we will do? We will try to separate the inequality from the middle. Our aim is to prove the function is integrable, means our aim is to find out the value of UPF minus LPF and prove it as less than or less than epsilon. Therefore here this inequality I will separate over the two terms, but before that I will call this to be statement number, I think, 4. Let me call this as statement number 4. Now we will separate. The first inequality I will write is LPF1 minus UPF2 is less than or equals to LPF. Second inequality is UPF less than or equals to UPF1 minus LPF2. Now in order to construct the term of UPF minus LPF, what operation should I take here? What should I take, addition or subtraction? If I take subtraction, minus LPF will be there. Minus LPF,
Addition.
once it is shifted to left, it will be addition. Therefore here we have to add. For adding we get adding the above inequalities, we get what we get? LPF1 minus UPF2 added with UPF left hand side, which is less than or equals to LPF, and the second is UPF1 minus LPF2. Now we will separate the terms of functions f, f1 and f2. Okay. To the left side, we will collect the sums regarding the function f only. Therefore, this and this we will shift on the right. Therefore, we left with UPF from the left, and from the right, LPF we will shift to the left. Therefore, this is UPF minus LPF is less than or equals to. Now, UPF1, this LPF1 will come on the right with a negative symbol. Therefore, this is minus LPF1 added with minus UPF2 will come with positive UP. Values of upper and lower sum regarding the functions. This is regarding function f1, this is regarding function f2. What is the aim to prove? Actually, the function is integrable, right? And to prove integrable, what should I prove? This term is less than epsilon.
Epsilon.
Okay, but we already know f1, f2 are integrable. We already know that f1, f2 are integrable. Therefore, what would be a value of this difference? UPF1 minus
Epsilon by 2.
This is less than epsilon actually. This is also less than epsilon. But in order to adjust this, we are writing as epsilon by 2. Okay. Therefore, may I write this is by the condition of integrability. Okay. Let for epsilon greater than 0, since f1, f2 are integrable, f1, f2 are integrable, therefore there exists delta greater than 0 such that for any partition, which form condition of integrability I am using? Partition P,
Second form.
whose norm P is less than delta we have. See, we are imposing the condition on the partition that norm is less than delta. Which condition it is?
First condition, ma'am.
Yes, it is first condition. Therefore, may I write UPF1 minus LPF1 is strictly less than by epsilon, and UPF2 minus LPF2 is again less than by epsilon. But if we put epsilon and epsilon here in this equation number, I'll call it as by 5. Okay, if I put the values both epsilon here, it will put together, it will give you 2 epsilon. Therefore, for the sake of convenience, we will adjust the values to epsilon by 2. Okay, therefore putting these values in 5, putting these values in 5, we get what we get. UPF minus LPF is strictly less by UPF minus LPF is strictly less by epsilon by 2 plus epsilon by 2, which in turn give us UPF minus LPF is strictly less than by epsilon. Therefore, what this implies? This proves that
F
F
is
is
integrable.
integrable over closed interval AB. What is F here? F is
F1 minus
Minus
F2.
F2.
Good. Therefore, for any two integrable functions f1 and f2, we have proved that their difference is also integrable. Now, what the job remains to prove? Integration f is equal to integration f1 minus integration f2. Right? Now, in order to prove this, let us go for part 2. Okay. Same methodology we will use as we have used in the previous theorem. Integration f dx is equal to integration f1 dx minus integration f2 dx. No doubt limits of integrations are from a to b. To prove this, what is the theme we have used? We will prove this inequality in two different inequalities. That is, first once we will prove this integration f is less equal by the term, and similarly we will prove it is greater equal by the term. Okay. Therefore, to prove this, we are going to make use of the Darbox theorem as we have done in the previous theorem. So let us write, since f and f2 are integrable, then by Darbox theorem we will write the values of the function, the lower sums. Since f1, f2 are integrable and epsilon being a positive number, therefore by Darbox theorem, there exists delta greater than 0 such that for all partitions P with norm P less than delta we have. See, in the last theorem, let me just tell you, in the last theorem we have written the value UPF1 and UPF2. Why? Because, check, here we have written UPF1 and UPF2 by Darbox theorem because UPF1, UPF we have found to be less equal by UPF1 and UPF2. This by star equation, right? But now in this concept, in this theorem, what we have obtained UPF is? What we have obtained UPF is less by UPF1 and LPF2. Again, we have not given the number. We can say from 4 also, right? Or one can call this as 4 star. We can. Okay. Therefore, here we want the two Darbox theorem regarding UPF1 and F2. Therefore, we will write Darbox theorem for these two terminologies because the fact is known to us UPF is less equal by these two. For Darbox theorem, we will write for UPF1, and we know for UPF1 it is strictly less than by upper integral plus epsilon, but upper integral is equal to integration because the function is integrable. Therefore, I will write integration f1 dx plus epsilon. One term I will write for LP f2. We know lower sum is always greater equal by lower integral minus epsilon, but lower integral is equals to exact integration because the function is integrable. Okay, but we want the term UPF1 minus LPF2. Therefore, to make it easy, I will just multiply by the negative. Therefore, it gives us LPF2 strictly less by negative integration a to b f2 dx plus epsilon. Plus epsilon. What is the next number? 5, I think I have used. Let me call these two as 6. Okay, now what we are going to do? We are going to use that star equation and we are going to put up the values. Okay, but before that, again, we should find out the relation between integration and upper sum. What is integration and upper sum? If I assume this to be upper integral, this is supremum of the upper sums, and the relation between suprema and arbitrary upper sum is
less than equal to.
Infimum of upper sum and arbitrary upper sum is less than or equals to, but upper integral is equal to integration. Therefore, the relation we have written is integration a to b f dx is less than or equals to UPF. But UPF we have already proved to be UPF1 minus LP F2 from star. No? Star is the number we have given from star. Now we will use this equation number 6. We will replace UPF1 by this minus LPF2 by this. Therefore, again it gives us combinedly strict inequality, strictly less. This UPF will strictly less by integration f1 dx plus epsilon. What about minus LPF2? Minus LPF2 is integration, negative integration f2 dx plus epsilon. But here, if we observe, these two terms cancel one another. Epsilon plus epsilon becomes 2 epsilon. Oh, sorry, these two terms will not cancel. Functions are different. No? I'm very sorry. Okay, therefore here epsilon plus epsilon becomes 2 epsilon, and we want this to be epsilon in all. Therefore, what should be the adjustment I have to do in these statements?
Epsilon by 2.
Yes, I have to write epsilon by 2, epsilon by 2. Okay, therefore here it will be epsilon by 2 and epsilon by 2, and we get integration f1 dx minus integration f2 dx plus epsilon. Right. Now in the next step, we are going to remove this epsilon from the right hand side. Inequality converts to be less or equal. Since epsilon is arbitrary, we conclude. What we conclude? Integration f dx is less equal by integration f1 dx minus integration f2 dx. A small positive quantity we are removing from the right hand side so that it may become the equality. Already it is less we have. So less and equality will give us the less equal term. Okay. Therefore here if you observe, this is the one part of the inequality we have proved. Integration f df is less than or equals to the right hand side. Now it remains to prove the reverse part. Before that, let me call this as equation number 7. Now to find the reverse part of the inequality, we will just replace f1 and f2 by minus f1 and minus f2. Okay, here I will write proceeding with minus f1 and minus f2 in place of f1, f2 respectively we get. Okay, what will happen if I replace f1 and f2 by minus f1 and minus f2? F will get replaced by minus f automatically. Therefore, we will replace everything f1 and minus f1 f2 by minus f1 and minus f2. Therefore, I will write minus f dx less than or equals to minus f1 dx a to b minus f2 dx. Okay, now we will multiply by the negative sign so that inequality gives the required inequality. Integration f dx is greater equal by integration f a to b f1 dx minus integration a to b f2 dx. And let me call this as statement number 8. Therefore, look at 7 and 8. Equation 7 is less equal. Equation 8 is with greater equal. Therefore, combining 7 and 8, equality holds. From 7 and 8, integration a to b f dx is equal to integration a to b f1 dx minus integration a to b f2 dx. Is it okay to everyone? Any doubt after
Yes,
this?
ma'am.
If what we have proved, difference of two integrable function is also integrable, and the rule holds that integration f is integration f1 minus integration f2. If you have a difficulty, you can ask me. Otherwise, we will move towards the next theorem. In the last lecture, we have proved that sum of integrable functions is integrable. In today's lecture, we have seen the difference of integrable function is integrable. Okay. Next theorem is regarding finding a midpoint in between. Okay. I think you have already used this statement that suppose we have an integration a to b f dx plus integration b to c f dx. What we have written this to be?
Integration from A to C f dx.
Good. A to b plus b to c is integration a to c f dx. Okay, what this can see, then it is equally integrable on a to b and a to c. Right now, this is a, this is c, somewhere here it is b. Therefore, if the function f is integrable on a to c, then it is integrable on a to b and b to c. Or if it is integrable on a to b and b to c, then it is integrable on a to c. That of the integration values are also going to be sum up. That is integration a to b plus b to c is integration a to c. This we have proved. Okay, but we have never proved it. We have used but never proved it. This is what our next theorem is. Let us deal with the theorem with the proof itself. Okay. The next theorem is, okay, the theorem we will write in 3 steps. C is the point in between the interval a to b. Then in the first step we will prove the function is bounded and integrable on a to b. Then it is bounded and integrable on a to c, c to b. Similarly, if it is bounded and integrable on a to c, c to b, then it is bounded and integrable on a to b. And so on is integration steps. Let me write all these. If a bounded function is integrable on closed interval ab, then it is also integrable on AC and CB, where C is the point in between AB, na? Where C is the point of closed interval AB. Number 2, if f is bounded and integrable on AC and CD, then it is also integrable in either case. In either case, integration a to b f dx is equal to integration a to c f dx plus integration c to b f dx, where c is the point lies between a to b. What will happen in between a b? See, look, here I will show you with the help of a sketch. Correct. Suppose this is the function which we want to check integrable or not, and let this be the point A and B, and if C is the point in between, what does it mean? Geometrically, integration is giving us the area. Therefore, divided by AB is exactly equals to area covered under AC added with the area covered under CB. Right now, area covered under AB is exactly equals to area covered under AC and CB addition. Therefore, this can hold if C is the point in between. If C is the point not between A to B, what will happen? Let us check. This is my curve. Okay. And suppose this is a curve is extended and here is I am having C. If C is not in between AB, then what about the area under A to C?
AB plus BC.
A to C, integration A to C plus integration C to B, area covered under A to C. This big area, na? Right? Added with area covered means in this direction. Okay? And we are not following any convention. We are not following any convention. So whether it is exactly the area under A to B, no, this term will be extra. Therefore, C should be a point in between A and B. Okay, let us do the first point. Now, in the first point, we want to assume that the function is integrable on closed interval AB, and our aim is to prove that it is integrable on the parts A to C and C to B. Okay, how to prove it is integrable on A to C, C to B? No doubt by the condition of integrability. Okay, therefore, what we will do, we will assume a partition where one point C is added extra. If I have 1 point extra in the partition P, it will become a refinement, and we will try to prove the result by taking P star as a refinement where C is a point extra. Okay, let me write the proof of part 1. Here we will assume that F is integrable. Given that F is integrable on closed interval AB. What I want to prove? C to B. Okay. Minus LPR less than epsilon. Okay, what is the form we have used? Second form of condition of integrability, right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Second form of condition of integrability. Now we want to add a point C in this. This is my interval A to B. Now we want to prove this will be integrable on A to C and C to B. Therefore, C I have to add extra. Therefore, let me write this with this addition of this point. Let it be the refinement. Let P star be the refinement of P such that, what such that, in P star we will consider only one point extra. Therefore, I will write P union singleton C, where C is the point in the closed interval AB. Right? Now, what we have proved already, a relation between the sums. We have proved the relation between the sum and their refinement is LPF is less than or equals to LP star F less than or equals to UP star F, and which is less than or equals to UP F. Okay, now we know that the function is integrable with respect to partition P, but we want to check whether it is integrable with respect to P star or not. Again, to check, let me divide the inequality into two parts. Let me write LPF is less than or equals to LP star F, and UP star F is less than or equals to UPF. Okay, and adding, we will check. We want to prove that it is integrable with respect to P star, right? So for adding, what we will get, UP star F plus is less than or equals to LP star F plus UP F. Now we will separate the summation values with respect to the partitions. Okay, that is with respect to partition P star, we will take on the left. Therefore, let us shift the term on the left, LP star F, and let me shift LPF to the right. It gives us UPF minus LPF is okay. But what we have proved, this term is already less than by epsilon. What is the number we have given? No number. Let me call it as 1. Okay. Therefore, may I write this is less than by epsilon. Therefore, UP star F minus LP star F is less than by epsilon. Okay. This is from 1. What we have proved, that the function is integrable with respect to the partition P star. But P star is the partition from A to B along with the point C. But we want to prove for A to C and C to B. Therefore, what we will do, whatever is this P star, we will write it into two different parts, P1 and P2. Okay, that is P1 we will assume the partitions of A to C, closed interval A to C. P2 we will assume the partitions of closed interval C to B, and then we will try to find out the relation between the sums. Okay, let me call this to be statement number 2. Therefore, here let me write, let P1, P2 denotes the sets of points of P star between AC and CB respectively. Therefore, what this P star becomes, P star is P1 union P2, right now? Therefore, clearly the P1, P2 are the partitions of AC and CB respectively. Correct? These two becomes the partition. And how can I write that P star? P star can be written as P1 union P2. Then what will be a relation between the upper sums of P star and P1 and P2? Can anyone answer? See here, this is total partition is P star. This total partition is P star. A to B, some note. Going to be the partition from A, just one say UP star F is UP1F plus UP2F. Correct, yeah? See, I will write here also. Summation over closed interval AB, capital Mi delta xi is must be equal to sum over AC Mi delta xi plus sum over C2B Mi delta xi. Correct now? Therefore, with this, may I say it gives us the relation UP star F is UP1F plus UP2F. Similarly, LP star F is LP1F plus LP2F. Right? Let me call this to be statement number 3 and statement number 4. We have already with us that UP star F minus LP star F less than epsilon. Therefore, let me take a subtraction to check regarding P1 and P2. Subtracting, we will get UP star F minus LP star F is equal to the right, I will write UP1F minus LP1F added with UP2F minus LP2F. Okay? Okay. Is this point clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now this term is less than epsilon. Therefore, may I say right side is also less than epsilon? Correct? This
Yes,
term is
ma'am.
less than epsilon. Therefore, right side is also less than epsilon. Therefore, I can write from what is the number 2, no? From 2 UP1F minus LP1F added with UP2F minus LP2F less than epsilon. Or here you can write UP star F minus LP star F is less than epsilon, and this value we are writing from the right hand side. Now check. Here in the bracket we have two non-negative terms. Now this is a non-negative sum because upper sum is always greater equal value sum. This is also non-negative term. Therefore, sum of two non-negative terms less than epsilon. This holds only if every individual term is less than epsilon. Right now, therefore, may I write since each bracket on the left is non-negative. Since each bracket on the left is non-negative, addition is less than epsilon, one can write separately the terms are less than epsilon. Therefore, UP1F, LP1F is less than epsilon and UP2F minus LP2F is also less than epsilon. Therefore, what is P1 partition from which point to which point? A to C.
To see.
P2 is the partition from C to B. Therefore, this statement gives us first function here F1 is integrable on A to C. Second statement gives us F is integrable on C to B. Is the point clear? Thus, F is integrable on F is integrable on A to C and C to B. Okay, thus by assuming that the function is integrable on A to B, we have proved that is integrable on A to C plus C to B. Still 2 points of this theorem are left out. It is not possible to cover in today's lecture. Therefore, we will take the point in the next lecture. If you have any difficulty about today's lecture, you can ask. Okay, to prove this result, actually what only one hint we have to follow. We have to add this singleton C as a extra point in P, and so that it will become a refinement. Once you define for original partition adding C to be a refinement, then this P star we have to write as the addition integrable on A to C and C to B, we will prove it is integrable on A to B. Ability step as well, that is this one, integration A B is integration A to C plus C to B. If you have a doubt on today's lecture, you can ask it. The remaining 2 points we will conduct in the next lecture. Okay. If you are not having any kind of doubt, then we will stop for today. Thank you for watching today's lecture.